Thanksgiving had always smelled like safety to me, butter melting over warm bread, turkey roasting slow and patient, cinnamon drifting in the air like an old promise. For decades, those scents meant home, meant family, meant a table where no one was a stranger. That night I was wrong. I stood just inside the doorway of my daughter's house, my coat folded over one arm, my hands rough and unsure at my sides. Laughter spilled from the dining room, bright, confident laughter that didn't belong to me. I hesitated, suddenly aware of how out of place I looked among the polished furniture and glittering glasses. Years had passed since I'd last seen her like this, grown, radiant, hosting her own Thanksgiving. I told myself I didn't care about the rest. I was there for asterisk her asterisk, just her, Dad. She'd said on the phone weeks earlier, voice warm but distant, "You should come." So I did. No one noticed me at first. I slipped inside quietly, like a shadow, like a man used to staying invisible. Coats hung neatly along the wall, designer labels, clean lines. Mine went at the end. The dining room table stretched wide and heavy, dressed in white linen, gold-edged plates and crystal glasses catching the light. At the head of the table stood him my daughter's fiancé, tall, broad-shouldered, perfect teeth, the kind of man who filled space without asking permission. He had a wine glass in one hand and the room's attention in the other, and that's when I told him. He was saying loudly, "If you can't keep up, you shouldn't even be in the race." Laughter followed. Approving nods. Someone clapped. I took a step forward, clearing my throat softly. "Excuse me," I said. He turned, eyes sweeping over me in a single dismissive glance. My worn shoes. My simple jacket. My graying hair. "Yes," he said, already bored. "I'm looking for my daughter." A pause. Then a smirk. "She's busy," he replied. "Kitchen's that way if you're staff." A few people chuckled. My chest tightened, but I said nothing. I saw her then standing near the counter, helping arrange dishes. She looked older than I remembered, stronger, beautiful in a way that made my heart ache. Our eyes met for half a second. She froze. "Dad," she said quietly. Relief flooded me. I smiled. Before she could step toward me, her fiancé laughed again. "Dad," he echoed. "Oh, right, you're the guest, not family, not father, just an inconvenience at the edge of his table." "Take a seat," he added, gesturing vaguely toward the far end. "Careful, though, those chairs are antique." I lowered myself into the chair, feeling every year in my knees. Conversation resumed, but I could feel eyes flicking toward me, curious, judgmental. The fiancé dominated the table, carving the turkey like a king dividing spoils. "So," he said suddenly, pointing his knife in my direction, "what do you do?" I met his gaze calmly. "I worked. I raised a daughter." The table went quiet for a beat. Then he laughed loud, sharp, cruel. "That's it," he said. "No offense, but times have changed. You gotta be something these days." I felt it then. Not anger. Not yet. Just a familiar ache. The kind that comes from being reduced, dismissed, erased. "I'm something to her," I replied gently. His smile vanished. "Listen, old fool," he snapped, standing abruptly. "Don't get philosophical at my table." As he moved past me, his shoulder slammed into mine, hard, deliberate. I nearly lost my balance. Gasps rippled around the room. "Watch where you're going," he added coldly. "This isn't a charity dinner." Silence fell like a dropped plate. I steadied myself, hands trembling not from fear, but from restraint. I said nothing. I simply looked down at the tablecloth, breathing through the humiliation burning in my chest. Then I looked up. My daughter was standing. Her face had gone still, not shocked, not emotional, cold. She looked at him the way one looks at a stranger who has just crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. And in that moment, I knew this dinner was far from over. The room returned to noise, but it felt distant, like sound traveling through water. Forks scraped plates. Someone coughed. Laughter restarted too loudly, too quickly. the way people do when they're desperate to pretend they didn't just witness something unforgivable. I stayed seated, not because I couldn't stand, but because I'd learned long ago that silence can be stronger than rage. As the fiancé resumed carving the turkey, his words blurred together, my mind drifting backward to places I rarely allowed myself to revisit. There was a time when my hands were clean. I remembered the first apartment after her mother died, too quiet, too small, but safe. I remembered my daughter asleep on the couch, her tiny fingers wrapped around the edge of my sleeve, as if letting go might make the world disappear. I worked 2 jobs then, sometimes 3. I learned to cook, learned to braid hair from blurry YouTube videos, learned how to smile even when exhaustion hollowed me out. I gave up everything without ever announcing it. A promotion I turned down because it required travel. A career I walked away from because it came with enemies, a name that once meant something powerful. No one at this table knew that. They saw an old man in worn shoes, and I let them. Across from me, the fiancé launched into another story. This one about success, about money, about people who didn't have the drive to win. His words were sharpened carefully, like blades disguised as jokes. Some folks, he said, raising his glass, just coast through life and expect respect for showing up. A few guests laughed. I noticed my daughter wasn't one of them. Her jaw was tight, her eyes were fixed on her plate, knuckles white around her fork. He leaned closer to her, lowering his voice just enough to sound intimate. "Babe, you okay? You look tense." "I'm fine," she replied flatly. I knew that tone. That was the tone she used as a child when she was deciding whether to forgive someone or cut them out of her life entirely. The fiancé didn't notice. He never noticed things that didn't revolve around him. "Hey," he said suddenly, snapping his fingers in my direction. "You mind passing the salt?" I slid it toward him without comment. He didn't say thank you. Instead, he added, "Guess old habits die hard, huh? Always serving." Something shifted inside me then, not anger, but resolve. He didn't know the nights I stayed awake watching over her bed, listening to her breathe because I was afraid the world would take her too. He didn't know the deals I refused, the power I surrendered, the danger I walked away from so she could grow up normal, untouched by my past. I'd buried that life the day I held her for the first time, and I would do it again. The fiancé stood once more, glass raised high. "To family," he said smugly, "and to knowing your place." My daughter finally looked up. Her eyes met mine. There was an apology there, and something else, recognition. She hadn't forgotten. She'd always known who I was. What I'd done, what I'd given up. The fiancé leaned closer to her, whispering something that made her inhale sharply. That was when I saw it, the final crack. He smiled, confident and careless, unaware that every word he spoke was carving his own grave. And I realized something then, sitting quietly at the far end of the table. This wasn't my fight to start. But it would be my daughter's fight to end. The fiancé didn't stop. That was his mistake. He leaned back in his chair, arm draped possessively over my daughter's shoulders, speaking with the easy arrogance of a man who had never been challenged in his own home. "You know," he said, loud enough for the entire table, "I always say honesty is important, especially before marriage. You need to know what you're signing up for." He glanced at me, eyes sharp with mockery, like family baggage. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Someone set their glass down too hard. My daughter stiffened beneath his arm. He continued, smiling, "No offense, but you can't choose where you come from. You can choose how much of it you keep around." His arm tightened. That was when she moved. Slowly, deliberately, she slid out from under his grip and stood up. Her chair scraped against the floor, the sound slicing clean through the room. "Stop," she said. The table went silent. He blinked, surprised. "What?" She turned fully toward him now. Her face was calm, empty of warmth. I said stop. He laughed, trying to wave it off. "Come on, babe, don't be sensitive. I'm just being real." She didn't look at him. She looked at me, and in that look was everything years of distance, unanswered questions, unspoken gratitude, and a fierce, protective love that made my chest tighten. Then she turned back to him. "You're finished," she said coldly. The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They landed heavy, final. The fiancé chuckled, glancing around the table for support. Finished with what? Dinner. No one laughed. Confusion flickered across his face as my daughter reached for her phone. "Before you embarrass yourself any further," she continued evenly, "you should know something." She stepped closer to me. "This man," she said, placing a hand on my shoulder, "is my father." Gasps rippled through the room. The fiancé's smile faltered. "Wait, what? My father?" she repeated. "The one you shoved, the one you called an old fool." Color drained from his face. "You never said," he started. "You never asked." She cut in. He turned to me, forcing a laugh. "Sir, I didn't realize. You should have said something." I met his eyes for the first time without lowering mine. "I did." I replied quietly. "You just didn't listen." My daughter lifted her phone. "Also," she added, "you should know I've been recording." The room froze. "What?" he snapped. "Not this dinner," she clarified. "Everything, the way you talk about people, the way you treat those you think are beneath you, the way you brag about cutting corners." She tapped the screen. "Including the things you said about your partners, your investors, your clients." His breathing quickened. "That's private," he said sharply. "You can't." "I can," she replied, "because you said them in front of me, and because I've already sent copies." "To who?" he demanded. She smiled, but there was no joy in it. "To people who won't like what they hear." He lunged toward her, voice rising. "You're overreacting." I stood, not fast, not threatening, just enough. The room felt smaller with me on my feet. "She's not," I said. He turned on me, panic cracking through his rage. "This is your fault. You poisoned her against me." I shook my head. "No," I said. "You revealed yourself." My daughter stepped back, creating distance where trust once lived. "This wedding is off," she announced, effective now. A silence. The fiancé looked around the table, searching for allies. Found none. That was when he realized the truth. He hadn't lost an argument. He had lost everything. And the night was still young. Revenge didn't arrive with shouting or slammed doors. It came softly. The fiancé didn't leave immediately. He stood there for a moment, stunned, as if the room itself had betrayed him. His mouth opened and closed, searching for words that might rewind time. "Let's talk about this privately," he finally said, forcing calm. "This is getting out of hand." My daughter didn't respond. She was already walking toward the front door, keys in hand. "You should go," she said without turning back, "before you make this worse." That frightened him more than anger ever could. Within days, the consequences unfolded like falling dominoes. Meetings were canceled. Calls went unanswered. Deals he'd bragged about suddenly required reconsideration. Investors distanced themselves quietly, carefully, the way people do when they sense rot beneath a polished surface. No accusations, no public scandals, just doors closing, one by one. My daughter watched it all with a calm I recognized learned perhaps from me. She didn't celebrate, she didn't gloat. She simply let the truth breathe. He tried to reach her. Messages piled up. Apologies grew longer, then desperate. Asterisk, I was stressed. Asterisk, asterisk, I didn't mean it. Asterisk, asterisk, your father misunderstood me. Asterisk, she never replied. When he finally showed up unannounced, standing in the rain outside her apartment, she listened without interrupting. "I can change," he pleaded. "Tell your father to help me. He has connections. I know he does." I stepped forward then, my voice steady. "I did once," I said. "I gave them up so she could have a quiet life." Hope flickered in his eyes. "I won't use them for you." The light went out. That was the moment he understood this wasn't punishment. It was consequence. Thanksgiving came again the following year. The table was smaller, warmer, real. My daughter cooked. I brought the bread, still warm from the oven. We ate slowly, talked honestly, filled the empty years with laughter and forgiveness. "I should have said something sooner," she said softly. I shook my head. "You said everything when it mattered." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. In the end, revenge wasn't humiliation or ruin. It was watching the person who tried to break us disappear from our lives while we stayed standing. Together,